Undertale, top of the chain. What am I doing? I knew this wouldn't end well. Talking to mom about the fallen children would have been a terrible idea. After setting the monsters free and after they moved up to the human world, I noticed her becoming a bit unlike herself. She and Son never really spoke much about it, but when they did, they thought I was asleep, though their voices were hushed in case I wasn't. Yet I knew that it was either ask her or ask Gore, and I was certain that asking ask Gore was even worse. So I decided to ask mom. It was late in the evening and mom was helping me get ready for bed. I could do it on my own, of course, but I guess it made mom feel better. Still, I noticed her hesitate slightly, and so I asked, "What's wrong, mom?" She gathered herself quickly, and, with an unsure smile, said, "Nothing, my child." I knew she was lying, so I decided that then was the time to ask, "Are you thinking about the children who fell before me?" All of a sudden a dead silence filled the room and mom froze abruptly. I watched as tears filled her eyes and waited before she spoke next. "Yes, I have been thinking about those poor children lately, and how I wish things could have been different, in any manner. I still wish that I could have saved them from their demises, but as I could not, it has haunted my nights since. I knew they would have loved to return home." Seeing her heart breaking at the memory made me sad as well. But I stayed determined enough to give her a hug and tell her it would be okay. I hadn't told her that sometimes I made trips to the underground that I'd liberated. When I was there the first time, I could see the souls of all the lost children. It wasn't very often, maybe once or twice a year. It had been 2 since all that happened. Everyone by that point had figured out I was a boy, so I knew now they'd stop asking at least. Before it was a bit annoying. However, I remembered something Asriel had told me after it was all over, about the first human to fall into the underground, a girl with blood red eyes. According to what Asriel had said, she had poisoned herself with the buttercups that grew down below and died from the poison. Mom and Toriel had no idea, but Asgore somehow knew. Afterwards, when Asriel was attacked and killed because he tried to take her home, Asgore had snapped, condemning them all. Thus is how that whole mess went down. Asriel had lost his soul and became a murderous flower called Flowey, but once all was said and done he changed back to his true self temporarily, to tell me everything and apologize. I didn't blame him. I couldn't blame him. With the last bit of time left, he gave me a warning. Look out for the lost souls, especially the one with the red eyes. Ever since, if I had a nightmare, it was either about Gaster or glowing red eyes and a sick smile stained red as well. The one with the red eyes, that one haunted me the most. It was in the ruins, in mom's old home. I was in the room she had given me when I first got there and it was dark. At that moment, I heard something banging around in the hallway, so I got out of bed to investigate. There was a darkness hanging over me, making me shiver as I walked towards the mirror at the end of the hall. Before I froze, I wasn't alone. Before me lay a shadow, about the height of a child my age. I wasn't sure if it was looking at me until I saw eyes open. They were a horrible color, blood red and glowing with determination and murderous intent. A smile showed up next, the teeth stained with blood almost like the creature had been drinking the stuff straight. Of course that thought alone made me gag, but I felt a pressure rising in me as the shadow, the eyes, that sick grin, came right in front of me. "You think you chose this path," it said, with a female voice tipped with insanity. "But it's like I told you, kid. Since when were you the one in control? Every time I wake up then, my vision fading to black before my eyes snap open. For now, at least, I was back with mom and she was leading me to bed, hand behind my back to usher me." Silence gripped her, so I figured Son was on his way so he could let her vent again. Once I was in bed, mom kissed my forehead and said, "Sleep well, my child. Good night, mom." With that, she walked out, closing the door behind her. I knew Son stopped by after I was sent to bed, because I heard him come in. He had just seen Papyrus to bed himself before mom said something that caught my interest. "Do you think I could have tried harder to stop Asgore?" There was a brief silence before Son spoke. "What brought us up?" Frisk noticed that I had been lost in thought about the children who died in the underground. "I can't stop thinking about them. Any of them. Even her. Tori. We talked about this, and you learned the truth for yourself. There must have been some good in Kara. She could not have been how she was just because hate to break it to ya, Tori, but she was. It wasn't your fault. Son hadn't made a pun the entire time. He was usually never so serious that he wouldn't say a pun, even in their previous talks. Fear gripped my chest, and determination made me shoot up in my bed, change into my normal clothes, throw on a jacket and shoes, and open my window before climbing out into the night. It was time for me to finally see. To my breath was getting raspy. I ran the whole way to Mt. Ebott, where the hole to the underground lay at its summit. I knew that mom would be mad when she'd discover that I was missing. I may have been the ambassador for monster kind, but I never slipped out at night. I never had to leave the house at night anyway. Any meetings were held during the day, but now I just had to know. I had to know all I could about Kara. Asriel never mentioned a girl by that name, but I had to assume it was the same soul Asriel warned me about before he became Chloe again. He said he used to love the girl like a sister, but after learning the truth, he felt betrayed. So if it was Kara, then what I feared in my first time in the underground was true. Kara was the evil voice in my head, trying to get me to kill all of them when I had first fallen. Son, Papyrus, Mom, Asgore, even Undine and Alphys, everyone. I managed to resist her influence until the end before the monsters were officially moved, but just barely. The only one who could remember the incident, and that I knew could, was Son. He had recollections of every timeline. I had learned after he finally confided in me, and was afraid of a reset. He begged me not to reset, at all costs, after helping me silence the voice in my head, which landed me under his watchful eye for weeks. Son finally deemed me okay to come out of my room and be around everyone again. The voice hadn't bothered me since, except in my nightmares as the shadow with red eyes. Now, it was time to confront the demons in my head, by confronting the demon of my nightmares. Once I made it to Mt. Ebert's summit, I stared intently at the hole that I'd need to fall through once again. Normally, I would have taken the other way, but I didn't have time to search in the dark night. Plus, it was Mom's old house in the ruins I needed to get to. The hole led straight to the ruins. Taking a deep breath, I threw myself into the hole, plummeting down. Meanwhile, Tori had heard noise come from Frisk's room upstairs. It raised suspicion almost immediately, making her eyes flare with worry. "Something got you rattled?" Tori-san asked, trying to ease the tension with a pun. "Would you excuse me for one moment, son?" Tori said, getting up and heading upstairs to Frisk's room. A horrible feeling pressed onto her chest as she neared his bedroom door. She had never had to check on him after she put him to bed. At this point, though, she had to. She had to make sure nothing had happened to Frisk. Gathering herself, Tori knocked on the door softly. "Frisk, my child, is everything alright?" She waited. No answer. Frisk still no answer. Growing desperate, Tori threw open the door. Frisk was nowhere to be found. His sleep clothes were thrown carelessly on the floor, his jacket and shoes were missing, and his window was open. A gentle breeze blew into the room, but Tori froze, horror gripping her soul. "Oh number!" Son at her scream. Son popped up in a flash of light blue beside her, his left eye socket still that same color and flaring. "What happened?" he demanded, his usually calm demeanor gone back at Mt. Ebott. The fall didn't hurt. Truth be told, it didn't hurt before. It had always surprised me that I never got hurt from the fall, as if someone were keeping me safe all along. My determination and memory was all I had to guide me at this point as I retraced my steps, finding the room I first met Chloe in with ease. A lone flower stood in the middle of the room, looking wilted. Its petals were drooping and the stem took on a more brownish color. As I neared, a faint voice echoed in the silence. "Someone, please, just kill me. Make the pain stop." The plea repeated in several ways as I kept getting closer until the flower twitched and faced me. It was Flowey. He snickered weakly at me, his expression changing from sorrow to rage. "So, you came back, Frisk," he hissed. "Hi, Flowey," I said, trying to stay calm. "Where's your trash bag friend at home?" "Actually, I needed to talk to you," He laughed in a way that was so inhuman I flinched, lifting his head up as he did so, before looking at me again. So you risked a lot just to come back here all alone this time, just to talk to me? You stupid kid. When will you learn? I've told you, time and time again, kill or be killed, and you didn't listen to me. You only think that way because of Kara. I snapped defensively. Instantly Flowey's demeanor changed. His eyes brimmed with fear at the name Kara. Knowing that I said what was needed to get him to listen, I walked up to him slowly, my arms outstretched a little, just as Papyrus had done with me to show mercy. That's why I'm here. Flowey, I've been having nightmares again, about some shadow with blood red eyes. You never mentioned a name for the soul, but I bet it's Kara, isn't it? Tell me the truth, please. Lying at this point will do no one any good. Please. The flower hesitated, conflicts rising in his eyes, before he drooped down again, turning away from me once more. When he spoke, his voice was shaking, like he was Asriel again. Yeah, it was Kara. I thought she cared about me, I really did, but seeing what she was planning, in the different timelines. Frisk, you were lucky enough to fight her off. Not everyone had been. I couldn't even resist it. It seemed so right, and with no soul. She was using people. Using them to kill any and everyone. Using their bodies like tools. The telltale sign. They carry the knife, and it's always coated in dust just like they are. Once I realized what was happening, I wanted out. Simple as that. But Kara, she snapped. I'd never seen anything like it. Though once I told you about her, she got angry. She got angry because you beat her and no one had to die for you to. But why, I asked, feeling very uneasy at this point. Why would she do any of that, to be honest? I never found out why. That part, you can do yourself, pal. Just leave me out of it and leave me to die again with that. He was done talking. I knew because he visibly wilted even more. I walked around him, ready to go about my business, when he piped up one last time with a warning. You know, she probably heard us talking. If you're sticking around for a while, I'd be careful. Could be dangerous from here on. I nodded briefly before moving on ahead, towards the house of my nightmares, towards the dark one within. Finding my way through the ruins again was no problem. With all the puzzles deactivated, and any real possible threat to me gone, I managed to reach the house. Weeds and all manner of growth had overtaken the house, and at first it looked like the door couldn't be opened because of vines. Out of the corner of my eye, in a split second, I saw something shimmer. I looked dead at it to see a knife, clean and sharpened. The blade was a pristine silver and the handle a dark brown. It must have been left there for me, as if someone knew I was coming. Suspicion rose in me, because part of me was sure it wasn't a good thing, but I stayed determined as I reached for the knife. Don't touch that. I looked around, slightly panicked. I didn't think anyone was around. No one was. One of the lost souls was in my presence, the one that haunted the ruins with a light blue aura surrounding them. What do you mean, I asked. That knife is a trap, Frisk. It's a cursed blade and you mustn't touch it. I will get the door to this home open for you. Please be patient for a moment if you would be so kind. With a nod of my head, I stayed still as the light blue soul walked through me and, with the magic I knew some to use, moved the vines away from the door and pushed it open slowly. You have access to the home now. Whatever has caused your return, let us all hope it was in your best interest. Dear Frisk, farewell for now. Then they vanished, as if they were never even there. I gulped as a horrible darkness stretched over me. It was like the feeling from my dreams, when I encountered the shadow. The inside was so dark, nothing at all like when I had first fallen down, but exactly like my nightmare. Kara had to be inside then. The girl that had caused so much grief to so many timelines. So many innocent humans and monsters killed. All for what? You know the answer to that, kid. Black wrapped around me as the door to the house closed, seeming to trap me inside the search. Where the hell was that kid? He'd never just run off like that, for any reason. Something wasn't right, and Son figured it had to be because of Kara. He stopped running, leaning against a tree to catch his breath. He'd run all over town, searching in the kids' favorite spots, asking anyone if they'd seen him, and nothing. Gasping for breath, he replayed in his mind what happened. Son, Frisk has disappeared. He has run away possibly, but to where I do not know. Please, you must find him and bring him back home. You're like a father to him. Maybe you can reason with him and find out why he has done this. I beg of you. Please. The tears in her eyes stabbed Son worse than any knife could. Timeline after timeline had been destroyed with a careless reset, and there were times everyone died, sometimes only a few, even only one. Sure, no one else remembered, and it was like nothing had even happened, but it was agony alone for Son. If Frisk was dealing with the voice in his head again, he'd have to be stopped, meaning breaking his promise to Tori about protecting him, and killing the human before the human killed any monsters. I'll find him. Tori, he'll be safe. With that, he teleported back to his house to check on his brother, Papyrus. Papyrus was up, rummaging in the kitchen. He was making spaghetti, pretty much the only thing he ever freaking ate, but at least he was okay. Son, where have you been? Brother, I woke up and found you were gone. Sorry. Paps had to go talk to Tori. I'm gonna be out late, though the kids run off and I gotta find him. What? The human is missing. Son sank down onto the couch for a moment, worry flooding over him unexpectedly. He saw Frisk like a son. He was a good kid, never harmed anyone, even those that threatened his own life. Now where was he? Worry not, brother. I, the great Papyrus, shall aid you in your search for the human. Nya. So the Skelebres split up, asking around to see if anyone had seen Frisk. Eventually, Son told Papyrus to head home and he'd keep looking. Kid, it better not be what I think it is, so I don't have to give you a bad time. Getting up from his place on the ground, he sank during his memory because isn't that what a laserbones does? He started up his search again, hoping and praying to any higher being listening that Frisk was alright. Back to Frisk. I knew it. She really was here this whole time. Glowing red eyes the color of blood stared at me menacingly, seeming to size me up. They were the only thing visible in the dark, and the voice from before, I recognized it from my dreams. Chloe was right. It was Kara. So, Frisk, it looks like you found me after all, she said, staying in the shadows like a fiend. I can't say I'm surprised, but I'm not that impressed. It took you long enough to get here. At least you showed up at last. Kara, I whispered, my voice slightly uneven, nervous. Kid, don't worry. You're not the first to be. Are you implying something? And why won't you come out? You're not the type to be afraid, as far as I know, yet you usually hide behind puppets. If you're really brave, come on out and let's talk, face to face. The eyes glowed even more before closing. Kara sighed in annoyance. Fine, you brat, if you insist. For she stepped out slowly, carefully, as if there was something dangerous around. Her eyes had opened back up so she could see where she was going, as if she was stepping farther than she actually was. A dark brown boot was first to show up, causing me to stiffen. Next, the pale skin of her leg, then shorts of a chocolate brown, then a green shirt with a pale yellow stripe on the chest, similar to that of Asriel's. Finally, her head. That was what surprised me the most. Her hair was light brown, at least lighter than mine, and ran a little past her shoulders. A scowl was etched on her face, in a seemingly permanent manner, and her eyes were no longer glowing red. They just dulled to a rusty blood color once I could actually see her. For a split second I thought I was hallucinating. I had never actually seen Kara before, so I thought maybe it was some kind of magic she used to play a trick on me. Here ya go, kid. Impressed yet I'm not, that's for damn sure. Son. The skeleton had popped up beside me, his left eye socket flaring dangerously at Kara and an arm in front of me, hand glowing the same light blue as if ready to attack her. Frisk, kiddo, you're going home. Tori'd kick my tailbone if you got hurt, and you better not pull a stunt like this again. Before I knew what was happening, I was engulfed in a blue light, and I reached out to Son, crying his name in a panicked tone before I was gone, and ended up back in my room, back home on the surface. Mum had been sitting on my bed until she noticed I had been teleported home, my hand still outstretched pleadingly. At first she said nothing, maybe out of shock and disappointment, but she stood and pulled me into a protective, terrified hug, tears hitting my jacket. "Frisk, my child. You're safe," she whispered. "I was so worried I had lost you. I'm sorry, Mom," I sobbed at last, my voice broken as I hugged her back. I felt so terrible. Mom must have been worried sick, and now Son was. Oh my god, Son. Mom, we have to find Son. He's right here, kiddo. My head whipped towards his voice and I saw him, leaned against the doorsill, perfectly unscathed. His hood had been up, but he pulled it down so he could look me dead on with both eye sockets. Worry and disappointment flared in them, but overall gratitude took over. "Kid, I hope you never pull a stunt like that again. You had us scared to the bone, and I was already bone tired as is. You're lucky I didn't have to give anyone a bad time. By the way, you're grounded." "I know," I sighed, actually smiling instead of frowning. I knew I deserved it, but didn't care as I ran over to him, giving him a big hug. "Thanks, Dad." He froze for a second, as if caught off guard, and I couldn't blame him. I'd never called him Dad. I'd always called him Son. I was almost willing to bet his face was blue, but then at last he spoke. "Anytime, son." He hugged me back, and I could feel him shaking very slightly, probably out of excitement. "Well, until, crash, human, there you are. I, the great Papyrus, have been searching everywhere for you. I was very worried you had been hurt." Papyrus picked me up from Son hug and hugged me close himself, making me tear up more than I had with Mom or even Son. Papyrus was innocent, even for a skeleton of his age. The fact that I'd worried all of them, it hurt. I'm sorry. I buried my face in my hands and started shaking, trying to contain myself but failing miserably. Papyrus cradled me in his arms, a supportive hand on my head. He said nothing. No one did for a long while. "Paps, that's getting to be a real pain in the glass." Son sighed at last, pointing to the window Papyrus had smashed through. "Oh dear," Mom whispered. "Sorry," Papyrus said. I kept quiet, still shaking and my face still in my hands from guilt. I didn't realize until Papyrus had gotten here what a scare I'd caused. I felt sick. I felt sick with guilt and anger at myself. I shouldn't have gone to the underground alone. I shouldn't have snuck off in the middle of the night to do so either. And it made me so angry at myself I started crying. Later on that day, after everything had been fixed and cleaned up, Mom had to work but told me to stay home and rest, leaving Son and Papyrus in charge while she was gone. Son had kept his earlier statement true and I was under his watchful gaze once again at almost all times. He gave me privacy for necessary things. Through it all, I just felt a chill in my body, and I was almost convinced I hadn't left the ruins alone. 5. Papyrus had called for lunch. By that point, I was ready to eat. Even if it was his spaghetti, at least he'd improved on it so much since coming to the surface. As hesitant as people were at first, once they got to know him, and with an encouraging nudge from his brother, they offered their help. Son kept me within sight still. He told me it'd stay that way until further notice, just like before. Somehow, I knew it had to do with him speculating Kara was in my head again. I couldn't lie. In a way, she was. Just not in the way he thought most likely. For some reason, I couldn't help but remember seeing her. I was still sure that wasn't her actual appearance, but no one had ever told me and I'd never seen her until then. So of course it was a bit off-putting. Wouldn't it be for anyone? Anyway, I was walking downstairs towards the kitchen for lunch, Son trailing behind me, but then I stopped at the base of the steps, feeling a chill down my spine. I heard Son call me, but it sounded far off for some reason, and I got really dizzy, enough to put a hand on my forehead. My other hand grabbed the staircase rail for support on instinct. It all cleared up relatively quickly, but I felt Son's bony hand on my arm. "I'm fine," I said, letting go of the rail and walking to the kitchen. For a second after, I felt some sort of sin crawling on my back. After Mom got home later that afternoon, things got a bit better at least. We all watched TV as a family and I did my makeup homework for school, since I knew I'd have to go back tomorrow or Mom would be upset. After that incident, I figured it'd be best not to upset her again. I still felt guilty, Dinner rolled in fairly quick. More spaghetti basically. Plus for dessert mom's butterscotch cinnamon pie. Afterwards Papyrus went back home, saying he had stuff he needed to get done but he'd be back tomorrow after school to cheer me up with a near. It made me so happy they cared about me enough to take care of me, even knowing in some timelines they weren't so lucky and neither were other humans like me. I still had the ability to reset, even after over 2 years, but I promised that and I didn't want all this to be gone and risk becoming something other than myself. I wanted things to stay as they were, not just for Son, but for everyone else, including myself. Besides, things were finally happy, and it worked, right? Then bedtime finally rolled in. Mum got me ready as she did every night, still led me to my bed and tucked me in, still kissed my forehead wishing me good night, still closed the door, leaving me alone to sleep. Hopefully tonight I wasn't gonna run off was the air she gave off. Lucky for her, I wasn't going to. I'd caused enough trouble doing that so I decided no matter what I was staying home. You won't come play with me, Frisk, after I showed myself to you? I'm a bit insulted now. Kara's voice rang in my room and I cursed under my breath. She was here. I knew I didn't leave alone. What do you want? Kara, I'm trying to sleep. She stepped out of the darkness. Same as before. Her appearance hadn't changed, except a red locket shaped like a heart dangled around her neck that was cracked down the middle. I recognized it. It was her soul, solidified to a locket. I'd seen it even on the Lost Souls, since Mom had pictures before they were killed, and she told me what they were. Even I had one, always tucked safely under my shirt to keep from anything happening to it. I wanted to play, she answered finally, looking at me as her eyes brightened from their rusty blood color to straight blood red. I was waiting for you all day and you never even came, not even as a courtesy. That's quite rude. Frisk, I caused enough trouble just looking for you last night. Now I'm tired, and I have stuff to do tomorrow. So a horrible pain flared in my shoulder as I realized she'd gotten angry and stabbed it, lowering my HP a little. The knife that had been presented to me in the ruins was now in her hands, stained red with my blood. I will not be ignored, kid, she snarled, her teeth bared. I said I wanted to play, and I'm gonna play, whether you like it or not. It's like I've told you before. Since when were you ever in control? Sudden anger flared in me, directed at Kara. Normally I didn't even get angry. It must have been a lack of patience on my part, because the voice I used to say the next thing that came out of my mouth startled me deep down. I've had enough control to keep you out and shut you up. And I'll do it again if it means your psychotic tendencies never hurt anyone again. My voice had deepened to a low growl as I spoke, causing Kara to flinch. Whether it was surprise, shock, or fear, I had no clue, because she yanked the knife violently out of my shoulder. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood to keep from screaming out, and I watched her eyes glow vividly with homicidal determination. You're a pain in the ass, she snapped, and I'll make sure your friends get what's coming to them. Frisk, one way or another, you'd better pray I don't if that's the choice you've made. I'll be waiting. Before I could even respond, she flicked the knife, splattering a little blood on the floor, before whipping around and walking back into the darkness in my room, disappearing immediately. I sat up in my bed, clutching my bleeding shoulder with my good hand and staring at the point she disappeared. Let the games begin, I said, a slight grin growing on my face. 6. Apparently someone had heard some form of noise downstairs, because I heard footsteps rushing towards my room before my door was thrust open and Mom stared at me, hands covering her mouth in horror. Frisk, she cried, running over to me. Once she was close enough to, she moved my blood-stained hand, revealing the stab wound in my shoulder. It was like her heart was breaking as she saw what happened. My child, what happened to you? She whispered, her voice brimming with fear. I hesitated, thinking about what I should say. Part of me wanted to lie, say that I did it to myself somehow in my sleep, so I'd be free to pursue Kara alone. But given I didn't have a high LV, and had no XP as well as very little HP, facing Kara alone might have admittedly been a bad idea to come up with. Chances of surviving an encounter with her were pretty slim. However, if I told Mom it was Kara, I'd never be able to do anything, or go anywhere, or see anyone by myself again. Kara was dead, but she was a much bigger threat dead than alive. and there would be no way to stop her from the world of the living. I felt the sins crawling on my back as I made my decision. I don't know. I was asleep. Maybe there was an extra piece of glass or something. Mom got me up and searched my bed. Strangely enough, finding a piece of broken glass, stained red, with a bloody point conveniently the right size for the stab wound. If Kara had put it there, she must have sensed my decision and acted accordingly. And it was very convenient considering Papyrus busted through my window the night before, and there were still possibly some pieces lying around. Since my story was somehow proven true, Mom took me into the bathroom and cleaned my wound before using magic to heal it completely. I'm very sorry I did not remove all of the glass fragments from your room, my child. It'll be alright, Mom. I'm okay. Really? I doubted she believed I was okay. Usually instances like that never happened. Not since the monster's liberation 2 years ago. The worry came off thick, and I was admittedly scared myself. I was considering facing Kara on my own, not telling anyone of my plans, with no way to defend myself should it all go wrong. As far as I knew, I didn't really know any magic like the monsters did. I might end up in tremendous trouble. Kara was vindictive yet resourceful, raised by Asgore and Mom. My chances of defeat were high, and that alone sent a chill down my spine. The next morning, I was escorted to school by Son. Mom insisted. Everyone kept staring at me. It was hard enough for everyone to accept monsters lived amongst the humans now, but it didn't make me feel better that the monsters got a bad reputation for being just that. Okay, kiddo, Son said, pushing me towards the school building. If you need anything, call Tori or me. See you after school. He just teleported then. Whether to his and Papyrus's house or back to mine I didn't know. I just didn't want to deal with school, or people in general. Lunch rolled in fairly quick, and I sat by myself. Usually I sat with the monsters who also went to school with me, but today I just wanted to be alone. My heart pounded against my ribcage like I was afraid something was gonna happen. Damn it, why am I so scared? Kara wouldn't dare risk making a move now, right? I really didn't know her intentions as of yet. I knew she wanted any and everyone dead. But why? The monsters didn't do anything to her, and there was no history of her ever existing as far as human records went, right? School finally let out. It had been a long day, and I was so glad it was over. I just wanted to go home, unwind, and be mindless for a few hours. It was impossible for 3 days, and I wanted a break. I was only a kid. Son was waiting for me at the entrance of the school. He was leaned against the wall, with up and hands in the pockets of his hoodie. I didn't know if he was watching out because he knew some of the other human kids picked on me, or because of her, or what. There had to be some reason because he was completely covered up. His bony limbs were concealed, as if he were trying to blend in. Of course if anyone knew him, they'd know the hoodie and he'd be given away. Hi, Son, I said, walking up to him. Hey, kiddo, he replied. You giving me the cold shoulder today? He lifted his head, showing a small smile. Hep, he said. Nah, kid, just trying to stay in the dark a bit, get it? Cause it's bright. Yeah, it is kinda bright today. Anyway, let's go home. We started walking side by side back home. For a long time, it was pretty quiet, and that's when a compulsion came over me. Since a few days ago, I had only cared about Kara. There were the other 6 souls down in the underground, and I hadn't visited them yet. It made me feel really inconsiderate. So instead of wanting to go home, I asked Son if he could take me. He looked at me from the side with one socket curiously. You sure? He asked. It doesn't seem like one of your brighter ideas. Please, Son, it's not because of her, it's the others. I wanna visit them. He tensed when I said her, knowing I was referring to Kara, but he sighed. Okay, I'll take you to Asgore's castle then. I don't feel like dealing with the weed again. Flowy, of course. But hopefully we can restore his body and make him as real again someday. Okay, we changed our course then, headed towards Empty Abbot instead of home. All the monsters knew how to get back to the underground, just straight to the end, Asgore's castle. That was where the lost souls were staying for the most part, and from the ruins, it'd take a long time. The underground was so vast, a completely different world. It amazed me in all honesty. Hey, I looked up in surprise, seeing Undine in the trees, a spear in hand. What are you doing here? She demanded. Undine, get out of the way, Son said, as if he was annoyed. You need to head back, Son. There's no need for you to go back down there, Undine snapped. I'm not going back for me. Since Undine couldn't see me, Son stepped out of the way so she could see me. I waved, and she looked shocked. Frisk, she asked. What the hell are you doing, kid? Visiting the souls of the fallen children, I admitted. You heard him. Undine, now please move. Taken aback, Undine lowered her spear and slowly moved out of our way. I hope you know what you're doing, Frisk, and you aren't planning something crazy, she said. I nodded in acknowledgement, and Son took the lead, telling me to grab the end of his hoodie so I stay with him. I obeyed, clinging tightly. I had no weapons in case it came down to a fight, and I didn't know magic, which is why I asked Son to come with me. Of course, none of the lost souls had ever tried to cause me harm before. If anything, they tried to help me when I was down there the first time. We're here, kid. I stared up at the ceiling. It was dark, and buttercups were spread out all around. They'd pretty much taken over the throne room since the monsters moved to the surface. But to me, despite everything, they were pretty. I forgot how big this place was. I whispered, me too, and usually I prefer not to remember, it's a nightmare. Welcome back, Frisk. The last thing was a chorus of 6 voices. The lost souls were here, waiting for me. One by one, they popped up before us. Blue, light blue, green, orange, purple, and yellow. They had the shape of humans, and the equipment they once had was on them, but their shapes were just shapes and they glowed their respective colors vividly. We're glad you came back to see us, said the green soul. We hope everything's alright, sighed the blue soul. For now, I hope so, I replied, but I need your help. The souls had agreed to help me out once they heard my plan. Son had walked off so I could be alone with them, meaning he didn't hear my plan to help Kara. He'd probably say it was a stupid idea anyway. He hated Kara like he did Flea, and kind of as real, but at least he was kind of trying to give him a chance. He found Kara beyond redemption and probably would never agree to help me stop her before something terrible happened. Then again, I didn't really know. I was the determination soul, the new red soul, as Kara lost it when she died, and I was determined to stop her by mercy. It could work in the long run. At least I hoped it would. Frisk, I turned to look at the light blue soul, noticing they called my name. Yeah, I asked. I hope you're right about this. So do I. Hey, kiddo, we should probably get out of here before too long. I don't. Son never even got to finish his thought before everything shook. He tensed and I fell down to the floor, making his eye sockets flare. What the hell is going on here? He snapped. The souls flickered nervously, probably wishing they could hide, and I had to stay on the ground so I could be stable somehow. She's coming, said the orange soul. Be brave, Frisk. I nodded before turning my head to look at Son, who looked confused and outraged. Don't do anything, I shouted to him. Stay out of sight unless a fight is absolutely unavoidable. He looked as if about to speak, but then the chamber went dark, and he hid very quickly, which is surprising. Kara walked slowly out of the shadows and up to me, a sick look in her eyes. So, you're here, once again. Huh, kid, she growled. And you're alone? I figured you'd be smart enough to leave people behind, Kara. This has gone too far, I snapped, rising slowly to my feet. No one deserves to die. No one. Especially not like that. You have 2 choices now. Please, Kara, don't do this. What does any of this madness prove? I know you're good deep down. I know. Before I could finish my sentence, I had to dodge Kara's cursed blade slashing at me. My HP was still really low. I had no XP, and no LV. How could I get Son? You don't know anything, Kara screamed, pointing her knife at me, her eyes solid black with solid red pupils now. You don't know anything, she lunged, and I was getting ready to jump out of the way when my locket glowed light blue and I was lifted off the ground right as Kara would have been on me. That's enough, kiddo, I think you're going home now, Son said, keeping me in the air before his eye sockets met Kara's eyes. As for you, Missy, leave my son alone, or I'll give you a bad time. Nine. All I could do was watch in horror at the sight below me. Son was keeping me up in the air above him, his left eye socket flaring menacingly and warning at Kara, whose evil eyes were fixed on me. The knife in her hand then pointed at Son, and a sick grin fixed itself onto her face as her head lowered. "You've been getting in my way a bit too much for my liking lately," she said, her voice low, "and quite frankly, I don't much care for it. This is between me and Frisky up there." Her eyes once again flicked up at me, making a chill shoot down my spine. "If you threaten my son," Son finally said, "you threaten me too. I don't give a fuck who you think you are not gonna hurt him." My eyes went wide, in terror and rage. This has gone too far. I have to stop this now. She can't hurt my dad because of me. Somehow, with the untamed determination that gave me, even though it hurt beyond comprehension, I broke free of Son light blue magic and hit the ground, cringing in pain. Double quote. "Frisk." Son floated over to my side and helped me sit up, his eye socket ceasing its flare and both going back to normal. His hand was still glowing, but that was it. "What the hell were you thinking, kiddo?" he demanded. "You could have severely hurt yourself. It would have been worth it to bring peace," I croaked. In the midst of all this, Kara remained frozen, her blade pointed down at the ground in what seemed to me hesitance. Her eyes went back to normal as well, and a weird expression was etched on her face. "Frisk, you have got to be the stupidest kid I've ever met," she said, her voice indifferent before she lowered her head. But I had gotten up in the process of her talking and hugged her. I knew I actually could touch her deep down for some reason, even though she was dead and had been for a long time. "Even if you don't see it, Kara, I see good in you. I wanna help you, somehow, in any way I can. There's gotta be a way to bring out the good in you that was buried deep down inside you because of your anger." She tensed to the point of feeling like a statue in my arms, as if she hadn't known genuine kindness. Asriel had shown her kindness, treating her like a great sister. He loved her as a sister. I couldn't understand her anger when she had been shown love, but then again I didn't know the entirety of her past. The only thing I knew was for the moment, I was at the top of the chain, and I had to keep it that way so no one would be hurt again, and I wouldn't end up resetting. I wasn't gonna use her, though. I really did want to help her, especially to stop her murderous rage. It would keep everyone safe, even and especially her. "You really are an idiot." That was Kara's voice, broken as if she were about to cry. Tears stung my skin as well. She was crying. "No one has done what you're doing, Frisk." Asriel, when he had his soul, yeah, he wanted peace, but I corrupted him. He was a good kid, and I poisoned him when I died, making him like a vessel for my rage. "I can help you, Kara," I said softly. "You don't have to hurt people. You don't have to fight anymore. I will help you. Will you let me?" I was aware of my surroundings then. Son was still on one knee beside where I was. The souls were vibrating their energies with mine, and apparently Son had called for help. Mom, Asgore, Papyrus, Undine, Alphys, even Flowey popped up. They were all watching me and Kara silently until, finally, Kara said, "Yeah." 2 weeks later, Kara seemed like a different person than before. She seemed like she was really trying to be nice to me. That was a huge improvement. In the 2 weeks that had gone by, she did grab her knife several times and smile that creepy, murderous smile. But one look from me and it was over and she put down the knife. Of course, everyone was still hesitant to be around her. Mom and Asgore especially, I think. Somehow, she'd become solid but with abilities like a ghost. She could fade out, float, go through things, sometimes, but most of the time she was solid, as if she were alive again, which I really wondered how that happened. Son discouraged me as often as possible from talking to her or even trying my plan, but I didn't listen. Almost positive things would be different and I'd never have to reset again. I thought it was the only way. Calm Kara. Everything would be perfect. Maybe eventually Asriel would come back as Asriel and stay that way. It was my hope, at least, to give Mom her son back. and I had to take the dive, right? I looked at Kara, whose head was down and hands balled into fists. Is everything alright? Kara, you know, Frisky, I've kinda grown to like you a bit over the past few weeks, she said before lifting her head up to look at me, her eyes glowing, softly. I know it's a bit quick to be saying that, but I think I can at least. A light blush rushed across my face, and I sat in my chair speechless. She likes me, I thought, completely flustered. She walked over to me then, and even gave my cheek a very light kiss, which made me blush that much more. But that's when I realized she'd hit my reset button by grabbing my hand and making me hit it. I watched in horror as everything went black, and I saw her grin sickeningly. See you in the next attempt, Frisky. The end.